And we are back. Welcome to the final Europa Conference League group stage match day video. It is time for match day 6, and today we will be trying to predict which sides will be making it through to the last 16, which sides will be making it into the playoffs, and sadly, for some, which sides will be getting eliminated. So before we get into it, as always, a massive thank you for all of you guys that have supported this series over the course of the last couple of months. I think we've had supporters from near enough every single team arrive in the comments at some point over the course of this series so far. So if it is one of your sides that will be departing over the course of this week, thank you very much for supporting the channel, and hopefully we will see you again in the future. As for everyone else, if you're new around here, please do consider subscribing, because we also cover all of the Champions League and Europa League with 2 match days to go in those. We posted our video yesterday for today's quarterfinals in the English League Cup, and then of course over the Christmas and New Year period we'll be covering all of the Premier League and FA Cup matches before European football returns in a few weeks' time. And don't forget, as always, to drop a like on this video if you do enjoy all of the prediction series on this channel. Let's now move ahead to the prediction screen, where you'll see that after match day 5 we're on 51 out of 90 in the Conference League, which isn't too bad, comfortably over 50%, with only 3 correct scores, but we did get 1 correct score on match day 5. And the final message to say before we actually get into the predictions is, as you can see on your screen right now, we've made a slight alteration to how we present the teams today. Normally on the final match day of a group stages, what I will do is I'll bring up the table and show all the possible connotations, but given the fact that this is a 36 team league, I can't just plop the massive league table on your screen for the entirety of this. So what I've done instead is, next to each of the team names, I've put where they are in the table as things stand, and then when I talk about each match, I'll tell you how many points they're on and how close they are to each respective section of the table. So hopefully you guys will still end up getting all the relevant information from this video. But without any further ado, let's get into it. Finally, all the games are being played at the same time, so we don't have to jumble things around. We have literally got all 18 games taking place at 8 o'clock tomorrow night. So it's all being done in alphabetical order, and we'll start off in Cyprus for Apoel taking on Astana. Apoel currently in 10th, Astana in 28th, which means that Apoel are only outside the round of 16 places on goal difference alone. They are on 10 points just on goals off of those round of 16 places. Astana, unfortunately for them, are 2 points off a playoff spot. They're 4 positions, but 2 points off the playoffs, which means they simply have to win, or Astana will be eliminated tomorrow night. For Apoel, they've got Marquinhos and Safo injured, and there are no concerns for Astana at all going into this match. However, with Apoel winning all of their last 3 conference games and Astana managing to muster up absolutely 0 points away from home in their previous Europa Conference League matches so far, I have to go for an Apoel win here. I'm going to go for 3-1. It could get a bit chaotic because Astana are going to be desperate for the win here, but I just think Apoel are going to be too strong on the night. I'm going for 3-1 to Apoel. Keeping things with Cyprus, the other Nicosia is Omonia, and they will be travelling to Barak Banja Luka. 2 sides that occupy 2 positions right next to each other, 20th and 21st. However, it is BBL that are 1 point ahead of their visitors in this match. Realistically, a draw suits both of these sides. They're still a few points ahead of safety, and realistically, they cannot make it into the last 16 places. So it's going to be an interesting one. Omonia are 2 points above safety. BBL are 3 points above safety, 3 points from the automatic last 16 places. In terms of the actual form, though, it is Omonia and Nicosia that come into this on a much better run of form, and BBL are going to be missing their first choice goalkeeper for this one. So with that being said, I still have to fancy it's going to be Omonia that get the result here, especially after beating Rapid last week, who are a side that normally perform very, very well. More on them later. So I'm going to go for a 1-0 win to the Cypriots here. Could be a tight one. Could definitely see this one being a draw. But I just think with the way that Barak have played over the last few weeks, I'm going to edge it in favour of Omonia in this one. Next up, we have Cercle Brugge taking on Istanbul Basaksehir. Both sides essentially need the win to get what they need from this. Cercle are currently in the last 16 spots, but they are on 10 points. So they're only in those spots on goal difference. And a failure to get a win here may not be enough to secure that last 16 spot with so many sides chasing. For Istanbul, they are 24th, which means they currently occupy the absolute last playoff place. So again, a draw might not be enough for them to secure that playoff spot, but a win 100% would. Going into this, both sides are actually doing okay. Cercle with a great result last week in the Europa Conference League, backed up by a 1-1 draw away to fellow conference sides Gent. More on them shortly. Whereas for Basaksehir, it was victory for them as well last week, but they backed it up with a defeat away to Fenerbahce back in Turkey. But to be fair, that is a relatively expected result back in Turkey with how strong Fenerbahce are, especially at home. Going into this, I think both sides are pretty even on paper. Both players have a couple of players listed as doubtful, so I'm going off the assumption that everyone's going to be available for both teams here. Like I just said, they're pretty even on paper, so I'm going to go for a draw in this. I'm going for a 2-2 draw, which, like I say, could be beneficial to both, but could also be disastrous for both as well. Next up, we have two sides that are both currently occupy last 16 places. Top of the league, Chelsea will be taking on 6th place Shamrock Rovers. An incredible run for the Irish side in this Conference League so far. For Chelsea, they are basically secured. Well, they are secured in the last 16 regardless, but it's just a question of can they top the group, and they only need 1 point to secure that top spot in this group. Meanwhile, Shamrock currently sit just 1 point above the teams in the current playoff spot. So they're on 11 points and you have all those sides on 10 points. So realistically, they will want a draw from this and will be very anxious of what could happen to them if they're on the receiving end of a defeat here. But even though they've got no fresh injury concerns, and Chelsea do have a fair few, we know how good Chelsea have been so far in this tournament. We know how good Chelsea are just in general at the moment. Arguably, they are the best side in English football at the moment, and certainly that is true on the current form guide. So even if they do make wholesale changes, I would expect Chelsea to finish this group off in style. I'm going to go for a 3-1 victory to Chelsea, and then we'll just have to see if Shamrock have accumulated enough points to keep themselves in the last 16 from their opening 5 matches. That then takes us to Djurgardens taking on Legia Warsaw, and this is just proof of how tight this is at the moment. Djurgardens are in 11th place, Legia are in 4th. If Djurgardens actually win this match, they go above Legia Warsaw. There's only 2 points in it between 4th and 11th, so a win for the home side would absolutely jump them straight up into those last 16 places. Under normal circumstance, I would say Legia would have to still be considered the favourites here. However, they had a massive wobble last week at home to Lugano, which also saw them get Pankov sent off. So he'll be suspended for this one. And they have multiple injuries going into this one as well. Meanwhile, Djurgardens have no fresh injury concerns to be worried about and come into this off the back of 3 wins in a row in this competition. So even though on paper I would still expect Legia to be the stronger side, I just think after what happened last week and with the form that Djurgardens are in, I'm actually going to go for them. And I'm going to go for a 2-0 victory to the Swedes, which will potentially, I think, will see them into the last 16. Then we have two sides that are absolutely bizarre to talk about. Heidenheim occupy 15th place. St Gallen are in 30th. Heidenheim have to win if they're going to have any chance of getting into the last 16. Again, just proof of how tight this table is, that a side in 15th could still get into the top 8. Whereas for St Gallen, they simply have to win or they're automatically eliminated. Even a draw would not be enough for them. However, Heidenheim have lost all of their last 7 matches in a row. So if it's going to happen for St Gallen, they're not going to get a better opportunity than this. You're playing against a side that's lost 7 games in a row. The problem is, St Gallen got hammered 4-1 at home by Vitoria last week at home. So I have to look at this fixture and say, realistically, even with Heidenheim's poor run of form and mounting injury list, they've still got to be considered the favourites for this one. However, with both sides realistically needing the win, chaos could breed absolute disaster for one of these sides. I'm going to go for the Germans. I'm going to go for 3-2. This could be a really fun one. We'll see what happens. Now we move on to the first of the already eliminated sides. That is, unfortunately, Petrocub. They are in 35th place. And sadly, even a win at Heart would not be enough to see them get into the playoff spaces. For Heart, they are 2 points from safety in 23rd place. So they know that a win will be enough to secure a playoff spot, and potentially even a draw could do that as well. In terms of the actual match itself, Heart don't really have any significant injuries, and neither do Petrocub, so we're taking this on face value. And the way I see it, with Petrocub already out, with Heart with a pretty decent home record, it's got to be the Scottish side that get the win to secure their playoff spot. I'm going for a 2-0 victory to Hearts. That then takes us to Jagiellonia taking on Olimpija, 8th versus 14th. Essentially, the winner will be making their way into the last 16. However, both of these sides will feel like they missed out last week, both suffering defeats. Jagiellonia to Mlada and Olimpija losing 4-1 at home to Cercle, meaning that, as we've just said, it is a must-win for both to get that last 16 spot. The loser will be getting a playoff spot regardless what happens, and arguably a draw would be a disaster for both, as it could mean that both sides end up in the playoffs if they end up drawing this one. In terms of injuries and suspensions, Grande is suspended and Montinho is injured for JB. Meanwhile, Thylesen is suspended for Olimpija. I can see this being a very, very nervy affair going into this, but given the fact that JB have got a perfect home record in this Conference League so far, I am backing them to get the result, which will see them into the last 16. I'm going for a 2-1 victory to Jagiellonia. Final prediction then on the first page sees already eliminated and absolutely still pointless Larne taking on 13th place Gent, who are another side that again basically need to win this match to make sure they are getting themselves in with a chance of getting one of those last 16 places. To be honest though, it's not much of a contest this. Gent won 3-1 against Backa last week, and as we mentioned, then got the draw against Cercle back in Belgium going in during the week. To be fair, Gent do still have a fair few players missing, including the likes of Ongba and Samois, but realistically it shouldn't matter against a side that really has struggled to make any impact on this competition so far. I'm going for a 2-0 victory to the Belgians, which again could see them, or arguably should see them, into the last 16. That is it for the first half of this video then, so take one last look at the predictions we have got on this page, because it is now time to flip over to the second page for the other 9 fixtures taking place tomorrow night. And we start off with the final side that is also already relegated, or eliminated should I say. That is LASK, who lost 7-0 in Florence last week to Fiorentina, and they're going to be taking on the Vikings of Reykjavik, who currently sit in 19th. They are 3 points from safety, but they are also 3 points from the last 16, so they'll definitely want the win, albeit an incredibly unrealistic chance. I think it might actually be impossible given how many teams are in and around that area of the table for them to get into the last 16. But they're going to want the win just to make sure. But ultimately, a draw will be enough for them to secure a playoff spot. And I think that is going to be their priority coming into this match. Also, when you consider that LASK's only 2 points so far in this Conference League have come from their 2 home matches, which obviously ended in draws, I think even with LASK being on paper the stronger side, I think the draw is actually the most likely result here. To be honest, you never know, because like we say, LASK are a stronger team and they do have the home advantage, but they've just been so poor, and with them already being out, I can't see them risking any first-team players in this one. I'm going for a 1-1 draw, which will see the Vikings into the playoffs. That then takes us to a very interesting one. Anything but defeat guarantees a last 16 spot for Lugano, who currently sit in 5th place in the table. Whereas for Pafos, they know a win will see them into the last 16 places. However, a draw or a defeat means that they will still be getting a playoff spot. So it is essentially a free hit for Pafos coming into this one. Coming into this, Lugano will be without Babic and Rita, but Pafos have a completely fully fit first team coming into this match. So it is a free hit, but I just think with the way Lugano have played so far, and with them being the home side, I've still got to go for them. and I'm going for a 1-1 draw. Next up, we have a very nervy affair as 26th place Molde take on 22nd Mlada Borislav. Realistically, Molde have to win this match if they're going to have any chance of getting a playoff spot, because even a draw would be very unlikely to see them into the next round. For Mlada, they have won their last 2 matches, which is how they've got into this position in the first place, but still need a minimum of a draw to get a playoff spot. But no, a win will guarantee them a place in the playoffs. In terms of injuries and suspensions, Bjornbak could be missing for Molde. Meanwhile, Costa and Kozel both remain out for Mlada in this one. To be honest, I can't really split them. I think, as I say, it's going to be a very nervy game. I think both sides are going to be desperate for the win, but also desperate to not lose. So I can see it being very, very cagey. So I'm going to end this one by going for a 2-2 draw between Molde and Mlada, which then takes us to Celje taking on the New Saints. Both of these sides currently out of a playoff spot, so they got to win. Both sides need to win. It's 25th and 32nd, but in terms of the New Saints, who we'll touch on first, realistically, even a victory for them would still require them to have a fair few teams above them lose, and still require them to get a bit of goal difference on their side as well. For Celje, again, they've got to win as well, but they haven't won any of their last 4. That said, the New Saints have lost all of their last 3, so both sides are on really poor runs of form at the moment. Both sides have a fair few injuries. I say fair few, a couple of injuries coming into this one, but neither side have any players suspended. For me, though, you've got to go for the home side in this scenario. I'm going for a Slovenian win. I'm going for 2-1 to Celje, which it should mean they occupy a playoff spot come the end of Thursday night. That then takes us to Panathinaikos and Dinamo Minsk. Minsk did get their first point of this Conference League on match day 5, which means they still actually have a mathematical chance of getting into the playoffs, but it's incredibly unrealistic. And that victory was against bottom club Larne. Meanwhile, Panathinaikos are absolutely flying at the moment. They have won all of their last 4 and know that victory in this one will secure them a playoff spot. So for me, there's only going to be one victory here. Even with Spora still missing, they have every single other player available to them. So I've got to go for Panathinaikos. This is arguably the easiest prediction of the night. I'm going for a 3-0 victory to the Greeks. Now we come on to 2 sides with incredibly contrasting form. Despite Rapid being in 9th and Copenhagen being in 16th, Rapid haven't won any of their last 5. Meanwhile, Copenhagen have won all of their last 5. Both sides need the win to get their chances of the last 16 secured, although it's even going to be a difficult one for Copenhagen with how many teams are above them in the race for the last 16 places. But a win for Rapid would guarantee them that last 16 spot. However, Vienna do go into this again with a fair few first-team players unavailable for this, and Copenhagen not only will have all of their first team ready to go, but also rested their star players at the weekend when they still won back in the Danish Cup. So I think that Copenhagen are definitely the side to beat here. Rapid obviously losing last week as well in this competition. I think they are limping over the finish line, and I don't think they're going to make it. I think Copenhagen are going to beat them. I'm going for a 3-1 victory to FC Copenhagen. That then brings us to Real Betis and HJK Helsinki. I'm not going to try and say the whole name again, but let's be honest, Real Betis have been very poor in this tournament so far. They're on 7 points in 17th place, but after 5 games, they've only got 5 goals, and they've conceded 5 as well. However, HJK are another one of those sides that currently have 4 points and know that a win is the only scenario where they get themselves into a playoff spot. Meanwhile, Betis aren't really playing for anything. They're unrealistically going to get into the last 16, despite being 3 points behind the last 16 places. But also, they're realistically not going to get eliminated from the playoffs, given how many teams are between them and the elimination zone. So it's really a bit of a dead game for Real Betis, but they need to make sure that they get themselves at least a point in this one. And against an HJK side that are going to be absolutely desperate to get the victory, I can see Real Betis actually capitalising on that hitting them on a few counter-attacks and getting themselves the victory. So I'm going to go for the Spanish side. I'm going to go for 3-1. But, like I say, they're not really playing for anything, Real Betis. So there is an opportunity here for Helsinki to take advantage. But unfortunately, I just don't think they're good enough to get the result against their Spanish counterparts. 2 matches to go then. And the first of those sees another pair of sides out of the playoff picture at the moment. 27th are Backa, 31st are Noah. Backa, yet another side that are on 4 points. Noah are on 3. But what's most important to consider going into this prediction is that Noah currently have 0 points from their 2 away fixtures and 0 goals as well. So they've got to produce something they have not produced in either of their 2 away fixtures so far. Meanwhile, Backa have done all right, especially at home. So I still think they've got to be considered the favourites for this one. Not only that, Noah also have their first choice goalkeeper unavailable to them as well. And Backa Apoel have their full first team available. So for me, it's got to be the home side that gets the victory again in this one. I'm going for 2-0. And unfortunately, that will see the end of the road for FC Noah. And now finally, we move from the bottom all the way to the top, and arguably the biggest match of the night, because it is second taking on third, Vitoria taking on Fiorentina. And, well, it's a real interesting one, this, because both sides are already basically going to be in the last 16 places, regardless of what happens in this fixture, although arguably, Fiorentina still need to make sure they get 1 point just in case all of those sides chasing manage to get their victory and Fiorentina lose, because they're only on 12. As we've mentioned a few times, there are a fair few sides on 10 points that could all jump above Fiorentina if they all win. So they're going to still need minimum a draw. Vitoria are on 13 points though, so they're basically safe whatever happens. Both sides have really good goal differences as well coming into this, but Fiorentina's good run of form did come to an end with defeat at Bologna at the weekend. Meanwhile, Vitoria backed up their heavy victory in Switzerland by getting a 2-2 draw away at Rio Ave at the weekend. In terms of injuries and suspensions, the only real missing player for either side is Birigai for Fiorentina. So I'm taking this on face value. On paper, Fiorentina are definitely the stronger side, but with Vitoria at home and arguably a draw suiting both teams, I expect that is the way the game is going to go. So we're going to round off the final predictions of the Conference League group stages with a 1-1 draw between Vitoria and Fiorentina. A massive thank you, as always, to all of you that have supported this series so far over the course of its running. We will obviously be covering all of the playoff matches, the knockout stages, etc., as we go on through the rest of the season. So a massive thank you very much for watching once again from me. Don't forget to leave all your thoughts on each of the individual matches and on the total package as a whole down in the comment section below. I will be back tomorrow night with my post-match reaction to Tottenham versus Manchester United in the League Cup. And then we'll be doing Premier League predictions again on Friday morning as always. So I'll see you there.